Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In honor of the upcoming 94th Annual Academy Awards, I'm going to be ranking all 10 Best Picture nominees that are up for the famed category at the end of the night. Some of these movies are at the bottom of my worst list for 2021, and one of these movies is my favorite movie of the year, so it's a large range of films to talk about, a lot of opinions. These will also kind of work as mini reviews for these 10 Best Picture nominees. Let me know your own rankings of the Best Picture nominees of those that you've seen. If you've seen them all, which ones did you like? Which ones didn't you like? Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any new videos from Spoilers Ahead with Anthony Post. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So at number 10, my least favorite of the 2022 Best Picture nominees is Don't Look Up. For me, when I went to go see this in a theater, I really wished the comet had just came down and hit the theater where I was sitting to take me out of my misery. Now, I am in complete support of the politics of the film, what the film is trying to impart in terms of its message about climate change and the effects that our media-consumed world has. I'm all for it, but I just think this movie was a pithy example of those messages. I think that it is too broad. It stretches itself too thin with all of the topics it wants to hit. And it almost feels like you're doom scrolling on Twitter, just every single dramatic, bloated idea put onto a cultural canvas that doesn't really connect in any which way. I found a lot of the performances to be very varied. I don't think any of them are in the same film, which I think is hard because then you don't really feel like you gain your bearings in any comedic sense or style. And while I do think this cast is talented in other things, I just don't think their characters are given much depth to be compelling. They're caricatures, really, and maybe not even that. And the issue is that the movie, at some parts, is just, a straight comedy, but as the movie progresses and gets more dour and depressing, it tries then to make this film be about something. And there is a nice line at the end where Leonardo DiCaprio goes, "We did have everything, didn't we?" or something to that effect. I think in the end, the issue is that this movie kind of feels like Adam McKay is having a mic drop on the audience. Like that's how confident he is in what he's doing here. And when 30 minutes in, I just felt so bludgeoned by this kind of witty narcissism. The rest of the movie just did not work. It felt like too often I was being looked down by the filmmakers, even though I am the audience that is on their side, and the people who are not on this movie's side that this movie is kind of talking to, I don't think are going to see this movie, despite it being on Netflix. So yeah, it's a mishmash of a lot of contradictory messages, themes, and executions. Though I will say, it was great to see Jennifer Lawrence back in another movie after a couple years. I mean, the girl on fire is always strong, even in a movie like this. Then at number 9 is King Richard. This is a movie that is engineered to make Will Smith look good, and I think in that quest, they dilute a lot of the film's substance. A lot of the moral questions about what this man did in terms of profiting off of his children and kind of forcing this lifestyle to take them over. And then also there's a scene at the end of the film where he tells young Serena Williams, that he put the focus on Venus because he knew Venus would then get tired of it and she would be overworked, and then Serena, who he saw as the better tennis player, could come through. And again, I was like, I would love to know what Venus and Serena actually felt. I mean, granted, they are producers on the film, so I guess we know what they think about this decision because they're obviously fine with this movie, making their father a hero. But I just felt like too often the movie was ignoring the real questions it should have been asking. I think the reason why Ingenue Ellis is quite good in the film is she gets the scene where she gets to call out Will Smith's character. And I just felt that the movie needed more of that. The movie is also very long, and you feel it. There isn't a lot of energy to the movie for me, and what it boils down to is Will Smith's performance. And I think he does do a nice job. He's Will Smith, he's charming as hell, but it doesn't coalesce into any narrative that I really did take anything away from. I feel like as far as sports movies go, I've seen things of this nature. I've seen these beats hit much better in other stories. The number 8 is Belfast, a Kenneth Branagh Hallmark card. I think what I perceive to be the issues with this movie is that he applies such saccharine emotionality to every single frame that a lot of it just feels fake. The sets feel fake. They feel like one of those like NBC live musicals. The depiction of the Troubles and the effect that had on this neighborhood and on the parents, Katrina Balfe, I think, gives a beautiful performance. She's the best part of the movie. That contrasted with Jude Hill's performance and like so much time being dedicated to sitting next to the pretty girl in class, the two storylines just didn't work for me together. I think rooting this from the child's perspective, it's maybe okay for a short film, but I don't think for what Branagh wanted to do in terms of exploring the political undertones of society at this time, I don't think it worked. Too much of it felt very childish, so that when the movie does take its right turn into very dramatic, a lot of these riot scenes, it just felt too much like he was making two separate films and they just didn't jive together. What I think Cuarón did with Roma and Linklater did with Boyhood, you can see the movie that Belfast thinks it is and what it wants to be, but you look at those other two films, I think Branagh's nostalgia for his childhood really allowed him to escape from seeing that in the framework of the film, there wasn't a lot of meat on the bones of this story. The number 7 is Nightmare Alley. The modern mode of filmmaking that Guillermo del Toro employs in terms of the violence on screen and some of the film's subject matter, it just doesn't work well up against the classic and traditional styles that this movie also is paying homage to. The film feels incongruous because of that, and no real discernible interest or connection is made with the audience. I think character arcs don't impact in the same way because of the structure of the movie. It's told linearly, where I think a non-linear structure would have benefited this story, because you just don't get the same time and the narrative doesn't give the same power that it thinks it's giving with the limited time you have due to the structure they chose for the movie. Though, I will say, I think the cast is really strong. Bradley Cooper, the last shot of this movie, is one of the best frames of acting this year. And aesthetically, it's what Guillermo del Toro does best. It's a lush, but also very edgy, stark movie. And I think its exploration of the manipulation and the trickery that goes hand in hand with artistry sometimes, that was a really engaging question. And I do think the movie offers the correct space to ruminate on those ideas. Now, number 6 for me is Coda, which I know is a lot of people's favorites of this bunch. But for me, I do think that the movie is just down the middle. It's a nice, solid movie. It didn't blow me away. It's not doing anything cinematically that you haven't seen before. But it's very charming, and I think it's so sweet and pure at heart that you can't really hate the movie. Now, the cast is stellar here, and I think the lead, Emilia Jones, does a nice job of balancing the hearing actors with the deaf actors. You really come to understand their perspective, and that's attributable to how good they are. Daniel Durant, Marlee Matlin, and of course, the Best Supporting Actor frontrunner, Troy Kotsur. They're just really fantastic. But I also love Eugenio Derbez as her teacher, and Fredia Walsh-Pilo, who was in one of my favorite movies of all time, that being Sing Street. They're great too. The movie, again, it's a really heartwarming film. It has a lot of great comedic moments, but it doesn't cheapen out on the dramatic beats that it hits near the end of the film. And for people who aren't accustomed to deaf culture, I am, because I took American Sign Language in high school. But for those who are not, even those who are, it's a really nice introduction into the world of deaf culture and some of the barriers that are there for deaf people and also for children of deaf adults, and the transitions and the questions that they have to answer when they're deciding which identity do they lean, the hearing or the deaf one. And it should be noted, if Coda ends up winning Best Picture, which some people are predicting, I would be completely fine with that. I know it's number 6 on my list, and you may think, well, how could you be fine? What Coda represents, it's a Sundance movie, and the fact that it's been able to stick around this long, to the point that it's probably, I think, the number 2 movie in terms of my own personal predictions for what's going to win, that's pretty impressive. And any time that a movie can start at an indie film festival and make its way to the Oscar stage, you can't not be happy for that. The number 5 is Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, which going into the movie, I was very apprehensive. I was like, why do we need to remake this? What is he going to bring that is unique to the story? And it was one of the dumbest things I've ever done. Doubting Spielberg, truly, I will never live that down because I don't know why I doubted him. He brings a fresh vision to this time-old classic musical and classic story dating back to Romeo and Juliet hundreds of years ago. But I think what's most important here is the authenticity. This story just feels that it's been given back to the community that it's representing in ways that is integral. Ariana DeBose and Rachel Zegler and David Alvarez deliver such beautiful performances here and represent the Puerto Rican community, I think, in a really dynamic way. And as somebody who loves the original movie, who did this show in high school, I think that I have a very strong connection to this text, and it was able to sweep me off my feet just like any other Spielberg movie has done. If you love this material and you love what this story represents, I think this is a fitting adaptation that stands alongside the best of movie musicals of the 21st century and maybe of all time. Then at number 4, we have Denis Villeneuve's Dune, which is the grand spectacle that only comes around maybe once a generation. The technical, muscular filmmaking that is on display in this movie is unparalleled by most films made. The way he creates the world of this sci-fi epic, how he adapts this classic book and flawlessly takes the written language and matures it into film language. I think once the awe of the technical mastery starts to wear off just a little bit, because it can never fully wear off, on third viewing for me is when I truly started to see the thematic narrative of this film. What's it saying about chosen one narratives? And when people dedicate themselves to an image or a legacy that they're not even confident in knowing if it's true or not, but they want to believe it to be true, and that's why they'll sacrifice anything for it. As a huge sci-fi fan, I just think that this is one of the best genre films to come out in many a time. Then at number 3, we have Licorice Pizza. Paul Thomas Anderson hits another home run out of the park for me with this coming-of-age comedy that legitimately is one of the funniest movies I have ever seen. Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman's chemistry is off the charts here, as well as an invigorating ensemble cast that features the likes of quieter moments with people like Betty Safdie and just laugh out loud, gut-busting moments with Bradley Cooper. I love what the movie says about how when you're young, you so want to get to adulthood, and when you're an adult, you so want to return to your youth. And even if you're just so close to whatever line and whatever barrier you're on, that drive to get to the other side can be so prescient in your identity. The distinctions between what it means to mature and seeing other examples of people around you and wondering, will that be my path? Am I on that path already? What this says about life, love, the pursuit of living totally worked for me. And I think what's so great about the movie is it doesn't try to hit you over the head with anything. It invites you in. And that is the true work of a master filmmaker who knows the medium that they're working in and trusts the audience to join them on this journey. Then at number 2, we have Drive My Car, which completely took me by surprise. This was a film that I expected to be good, but I was not prepared for the emotional wallop that this movie was. This film shows the universal language of film and how we are bound together through heartbreak, through despair, through love and passion for the arts and for each other. I think Ryusuke Hamaguchi does an incredible job of maintaining a control on his narrative and his actors throughout this 3-hour runtime. I was engrossed by the story, and those actors are incredible here. A lot of subtle work. I could make the argument that this was number 1. That's how great of a film this was, and I am so looking forward to rewatching this movie for years and years to come. Then, of course, that leaves my number 1 being Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog. When I was deciding what would be number 1 on this list, and also what would be my favorite movie of the year for this film is also, I asked myself, what is cinema? at its highest level. And for me, it's matching a level of sheer technical craft with a challenging thematic arc that leaves the audience a different person internally from when the film started to when the credits roll. I think the film challenges the masculinity that has been tied to so many areas of filmmaking in general, but especially in terms of the Western. It talks about the roles that we are forced to play, and when we want to break free from those roles, how it can be so hard, both from the judgment of others and the judgment of our own psyches. The cast here is giving flawless work. From Benedict Cumberbatch, who I am a huge fan of him ever since Sherlock, and I didn't even know he had this in him. He gives a legendary performance here. And the range he has within this one character that at the beginning of the film, you think he's the most despicable villain of the year, to the end of the movie where you grow to have some sympathy for him and you almost feel sorry for him. Those dual conflicting emotions show how versatile he is as an actor. Cody Smith-McPhee gives a breakthrough performance here with one of the most interesting and intriguing characters. Kirsten Dunst continues to solidify why she is just a dynamite actor. Jesse Plemons, Thomasin McKenzie even shows up here for a brief moment, which, it's when she popped in, that was a really fun surprise. In the end, looking at all these 10 Best Picture nominees, I think Power of the Dog is the one film that I think truly represents film in its purest form. And it's the one film that I think should be remembered from this year. If I had to save one movie in a time capsule from 2021, which I think a lot of people do look at Best Picture as being both all of the nominees being representative of the year and then the winner being representative of what was the best that film had to offer, I do think The Power of the Dog is the film that should be remembered for both what it is saying and how it says it. The cinematography, the sound design, how they made New Zealand look like Montana, everything about this movie cements why I love this medium as an art form. And for me, it is the best picture of 2021. So let me know down below, what did you think of my list? What is your own rankings? And what are your opinions on the Oscars this year? There's been a lot of controversy in a lot of areas, so I'm sure it's a conversation that will never cease to excite and entertain us. But let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe for new videos. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you at the movies.